This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, I'm going to talk about sex as a life activity versus as a porn scene, and hopefully this will be instructive to many of you. Before we get to that, please do subscribe. My most recent subscriber episode was basically about why you should confront your partner about their dysfunctional parenting, because you are not going to show up as the good guy later on just because you were not as overtly dysfunctional as your spouse. And 175 plus other episodes if you subscribe. Okay, so a lot of guys have been trained on porn, and I talk about this as a problem a lot, and the reason that it's a problem is because porn isn't real, but it's, people don't talk about sex, ever. So a lot of times the only instruction that people will get is from porn. And I say instructions in air quotes because it's not really instruction. It's more like what not to do. But guys don't realize that when they're watching it. So guys who are otherwise like really nice and smart and good people think that they're supposed to do things like, quote, spit on it, etc. And, or like choke people. I mean, just like whip a woman into a million different positions, like just really kind of unfortunate stuff. Grab her boobs and her ass hard outside the bedroom as, quote, foreplay. Things that are just like call her really dirty things before she's even turned on. And you know what? Most women don't even like that when they're really turned on. Some do. Many don't, so I hear like a lot of things as a couples therapist, and these guys doing this are ironically not bad guys. They're not even, they're like pro women. They like women. They just think that women like to be treated like dirty whores because like that's what they see in porn, And so there's no foreplay in porn. There's no real instruction. I mean, if you really want instruction, you should obviously be buying the videos that I always am talking about on social media, on bestlifebehavioralhealth.com. On my website, you could go to the videos section or the workshops, and you'll see like Lick It Right and Blow His Mind and Partner's Guide to Female Arousal. These are all done by our sexologist, Heather. So those actually do give you instruction, but it's the opposite of the porn instruction, right? Porn, quote, instruction is not instructive. It's like a way to destroy your sex life with your wife. So, there's guys who are really trying their best, and they think that like the woman's going to be aroused as soon as she takes off her clothes, and that she doesn't need any foreplay, and that like her inner wetness is what, quote, wet is, because they've never been with her when she's wet, because she's never really that excited. I have a whole podcast about this. Do you know what female arousal looks like? Many guys don't, Anyway, there's just so many things here. Like I could do a whole podcast on all of the wrong things, but I gave you some of the real, the real big ones, talking too dirty, grabbing and acting too rough, too many positions. I have a whole one on that, the porn montage type of sex, I call it. And basically not understanding that the female body needs time to warm up, especially within monogamy. And this is responsive desire, right? Porn is not like a man giving his wife a massage and then they make out and then he starts touching her breasts and then he moves down lower. That's not porn, but that's what most women are going to respond to sexually, or many women, not all women. And of course, some women like to be told that they're a dirty whore. Some of them do. But you know what? Not a lot of them do by their husband, because they like it when they're in the honeymoon stage at exactly the time where the guy wanted to like spend $300 on taking her to a fancy dinner and then to the pumpkin festival the next day, and write her a love poem in between. people are just spun out like drug addicts on dopamine and adrenaline during the honeymoon stage. And so then her inhibitions are down and she's more sexual, just like he's more romantic, and then he really is acting like the romance movie heroes and she's acting like a porn star. But after that, things change. So that brings me to the heart of the episode, which is that sex needs to be a life activity. It needs to be something that you do regularly. The kinky stuff and talking super dirty and wearing outfits and using sex toys, that stuff is not usually regular stuff for day-to-day sex. That's usually for vacation sex or hotel sex or ovulation sex. And remember, ovulation doesn't come every day. It comes once a month. So that's a few days once a month. She's going to be more into crazy stuff. Now, of course, if you're listening to me and you're like in your 20s, I mean, you are truly unusual according to the analytics on podcaster for Spotify or whatever, because there's not a lot of you guys in your 20s listening. But then, yeah, sure, like every day is fun. You're always having sex. You dress up, whatever, you don't have kids. So yeah, sure, you have like a lot of wild sex when you're in your 20s. That's awesome. And, then things change. You get older, you have kids, and you're together for many more years. Most people are not breaking out whips and chains when they have kids in the next room. They're really just not. And if you have too much porn in your diet, you're going to think that this is normal and that everybody else is having such exciting sex and you're not. I have a podcast on that called Are Other Married People Really Having Spontaneous Sex? And the answer is no, they're not doing it on the kitchen table. They're not doing all kinds of crazy shit. They're just not. Once you have little kids and you get older, things change. And then you have older kids, but you're even older than that. And you've been together more years. So yes, sometimes you do crazy stuff. Sometimes you do super exciting stuff. Most people don't do that often. Sex needs to be more like how you exercise. So most people, you go to the gym and you take pretty much one of the same classes, the same workout. You enjoy it. It releases dopamine. You break a sweat. You see your gym friends. And that's what exercise is. What exercise isn't is Tuesday morning before your workday, you go bungee jumping. That's just not what people do for exercise. That's why they can do it all the time, because it isn't like going, like you have to go get special gear and prep and it's like 3 hours. No, like your workout could be 45 minutes and fits into your workday, and you drive 5 minutes to the gym and then you drive 5 minutes back or whatever. If you are expecting every time you exercise to be exciting, you're not going to be exercising very much, right? And so most people do not build their entire life around new and different ways to exercise. Actually, there are people that do that. They're called young men in their 20s. And so similar to the people who are having crazy sex all the time, they're the exact same age, And that's when you can really get your endorphins going and do all kinds of crazy shit as a lifestyle and go rock climbing. And that's why, and when they do documentaries about these people that are lost as rock climbers, they're not people with small children. They're like young guys in their 20s. And they were women sometimes, and they get lost because that's when you go do crazy shit. And it isn't when you are in your 40s with kids. So regular sex should be something where both people get off, where there's an order of operations, and it's not the same thing every single time. But you know what? It's the same thing a lot of the time. More than half of the time, it's the same thing. And the same thing works. So for many people, and take your erotic blueprint quiz, for many people that both have a sexual blueprint, this is pretty much just intercourse, like a little bit of foreplay and then intercourse. And as women get older, when they don't get as wet, then they use lube. So there are women with a sexual blueprint, and go back to the erotic blueprints quiz, who don't really like foreplay. And those women like lube a lot because they don't have to start out wet. And then they get their responsive desire kicks in through having intercourse. So this isn't like everybody, as I'll say next, but it's women with a sexual blueprint. Now, women with a sensual blueprint like to feel physically good, like by cuddling and getting a massage and kissing, a lot of that before sex, right? And if you want your wife to have an orgasm, you kind of have to do what is her sexual blueprint. Yes, sometimes, as I said, when she's ovulating, when she's uninhibited, when she's had a drink, when you go out to a hotel, then she'll do other stuff, probably. Some women won't. And this goes kind of away. As you get older, the desire to do more and different things in bed, goes down along with hormone levels. And it also goes down along with stopping using porn. So that's the first thing any guy listening to my podcast should do is stop using porn. And guys in my Facebook secret group always say, oh, no, I don't believe you. Then they go off of porn and it changes things so much for them. Sometimes it actually makes them less happy in the marriage and they realize they were truly using it as one of my favorite analogies, Soma in Brave New World, right? And it's like a drug. And it's just like stopping you from realizing that you're not happy with the relationship, not even just the sex life. And a lot of times, though, you get happier with the sex life because you realize that your entire comparison point was kinky sex being had by like infinity young women who are acting less inhibited than your wife ever acted, even when she was wasted and she was 25 years old. So it was really raising the bar for what your brain would expect you to have. Your brain expected you to have porn scene sex after watching a lot of porn, and instead you're having married sex. But the married sex seems worse compared to the porn scene sex. So what the regular married sex tends to look like is, again, a life activity like exercise or like eating. Every time that you eat, you're not at a Michelin star restaurant, right? You have certain things that you eat. So, for example, you probably eat certain meals on certain days of the week if you're like many people. Taco Tuesday, or you have chili on this day, or whatever the case may be. A lot of people have the same thing on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays. Some people don't do it as much like that, but they just have these things in rotation. That's what your sex life needs to be like. You need to have certain things in rotation. And most of the rotation is kind of similar stuff. So like a lot of people have a couple different kinds of pasta, right? But you know what? It's all pasta. And so that would be like different, little tweaks on missionary, right? Or little tweaks on doggy style. You don't have to do other things in the Kama Sutra dressed up in different costumes. And, if both of you like that, that's awesome. Then you're the people who do, quote, bungee jump or go to Michelin star restaurants all the time. But most people aren't that. Most people derive a lot of comfort from sex, if they're sex positive. Sex with your partner is comforting. It's reassuring. It's a way to say we're here, we love each other, we are still a couple, even though we are mostly parents, we are still a couple. And it's a way to connect. So it's like with your friends, you may meet at the same bar or the same coffee shop or the same restaurant all the time, or you may do a similar sort of activity. Like with this friend, I go to dinner on a Friday night once a month, That's what you do. If all of a sudden you are up that friend's ass and their text messages being like, oh no, instead of doing our Friday night dinner, you know what I really want to do? I want us to go to Paris. The friend would be like, what are you talking about? I have kids. Like, what? Is this message for me? The friend would probably be like, what the fuck? Of course, if you said it's my 50th birthday, so I want to do that, then your friend would be all excited. Just like if it is your actual birthday, then your wife will probably do more crazy shit in bed. And now I'm not saying that you don't do some different positions and sometimes you say something different and sometimes you put on lingerie. Sure. But that has to be sometimes. And there's more and more people I see with the ubiquity of internet porn and, the proliferation of really addiction to porn, to the point that you have to use it every day to go to sleep, etc. You really are underestimating how much it's becoming part of your worldview, that everybody out there is having crazy sex and you're not. Sex toys are, something you use sometimes, infrequently. So, same as the lingerie, same as all of this stuff. You need to be having meat and potatoes, and I'm vegan, so vegan meat and potatoes, or potatoes only. But you need to be having sex that both people like, where you kiss and hug and, both have an orgasm. There's really not too many ways to say it. So I think that that's about the simplest one. They used to have sex scenes fairly commonly, even in sitcoms. I have a whole podcast on how parents in 90s sitcoms used to have sex, that was part of it, and now they don't. But what was that kind of sex? If there was like some funny thing of them being caught in bed, it wasn't like they were wearing like, crazy outfits and they had like a huge dildo out. Like the man was on top of the woman in bed. Sometimes, the woman was on top of the man in bed. Wow. But like it wasn't some crazy shit. And that is pretty much a good template for what married sex is like. They're in bed together, under the covers, kissing and enjoying each other. And you think that both of them are probably going to have an orgasm. That's the goal. That should be like once a week, twice a week, if it's her ovulation week, it could be 3 times a week, but what it's not going to be is 3 times a week, every day, every week in perpetuity for your whole life, unless you're both like really topped up to the gills on enough testosterone to kill an elephant. That is not sustainable. And if you are doing it that much, you're probably not listening to this. Probably you have no time, but you're also both on board. But what I get is people where the guy is on a whole bunch of porn. He thinks they should be screwing in all sorts of ways, crazy ass kinky things all the time, because that's what the quote amateur people that he watches do, who are, by the way, making money. That is their career. And, that's not reality. So again, what the TLDR here is a couple times a week, a few times a week, maybe, if you're feeling energetic and she's in the right frame of mind. You got to watch these TikToks. They're so funny on the different phases in a woman's cycle. So it's like in follicular, she has all this energy. She's dancing around. She's doing projects. And then ovulation hits and she grabs him into the bedroom. And then luteal, she don't want anything to do with him. And then period, she's all cuddled up with a robe under the blankets, And that's it. Like, that's what it is to be a woman. You want to have sex only half the month. And after that, you really don't, unless you're young, not bait and switch, a young person. Young people love to do things like have sex and rock climb all the time. And when you're older and you're in monogamy and you're basically, a full adult with loads of responsibilities and stress, then what many couples do is sex a few times or a couple times a week in the first half of the cycle, then really once a week in the next week, and then not for her period week, and then they start the whole thing again. That's what I see in my practice in the happy people, because they're not happy. Nobody's coming in because they're thrilled, but the people whose sex life is fine and they're just fighting about other shit. That's like kind of more the norm. You have sex weighted toward the beginning of the week, of the month, and it's nothing crazy. As it gets to ovulation, maybe it gets a little crazier. The younger you are, the crazier it gets. And then it just stops kind of, and then it's back to the maintenance sex that just shows that you love each other, that you both enjoy each other's bodies, and you enjoy being close physically. It's like a comfort. It's like a hug. It's like sex should be like a hug, more like a hug than like whips and chains and crazy shit. When you're married, that's a good goal. It's for it to feel like a kiss and a hug. Now, if you can't kiss and you can't hug and you can't fuck and you can't do anything, then of course reach out to my practice. But otherwise, think about this podcast and think, are my expectations really way, way, way too high? And if so, can I cut out the porn? Can I just try it for 2 weeks to cut out the porn? Can I even just admit to myself that it's possible and a 5% chance, spoiler, it's 100% chance, that porn impacts my viewpoint on relationships, women, sex, etc.? That could be a good homework assignment. And thank y'all for listening, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Have a great day.